friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Olivia if you're new here, and I am currently writing a high fantasy novel going by the alias Project Amaranth. Today's video is kind of a bonus video. It's my way of saying thank you so much for 500 subscribers. It's been really cool getting to know you guys. Just knowing that you're following along my writing journey is really special. So as a thank you, I wanted to share kind of a sneak peek into the project that I'm working on. If you've been around a while, you'll know I kind of don't really talk that much about the book that I'm writing. That's mostly just because writing is a really long process, and I don't want to share too much before the story's actually ready. But having said that, today I wanted to share 7 or 8 of the stories that have influenced Project Amaranth as I was writing it. So hopefully it should offer you like kind of an indirect little slant look at the story, the vibe, and what it's about. So yeah, cheers, let's jump in. Okay, so I pulled 7 books off my shelf that were really huge influences in the writing of Project Amaranth. 4 of them are kind of more about the story, and 3 of them are more the writing style. So I'll start with the story ones, because that's more fun, and then we'll get into the writing thing later. So, okay, so the first one is a classic, beloved by all, but are there any fantasy stories since 1954 that have not been inspired by The Lord of the Rings? This book, in so many ways, I feel like it really defined for me what fantasy is. Project Amaranth doesn't really have anything in common with The Lord of the Rings other than maybe kind of a thematic similarity, you know, the protecting the good from the face of evil and finding hope in dark times. But mostly, Lord of the Rings is just like a really beautiful story that embedded itself in my imagination from a really young age. So that's book number 1. So the second one is very different, but I remember reading this book and it was the first time I felt like anybody had ever sort of captured the flavor of what I was trying to do in Project Amaranth. So it is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. The fact that this is such a sprawling epic, it's a huge story. This story spans about 10 years, multiple, like 5 different families, and despite how big and epic and sprawling of a story it is, it's also so intimate. The way he alternates between ballrooms and battles and the grandeur, the scale of it, he also will have very intimate scenes between two characters over a fireplace, and secrets will be coming to light, and it's just handled so beautifully. So War and Peace was definitely a huge influence for me when I was writing this book. The next one is probably a surprise to nobody, but Chronicles of Narnia. This book was like my entire childhood, and for me, Narnia has this effervescent wonder about it. It's kind of one of the first fantasy worlds that I ever really wanted to escape to. So many stories nowadays are that typical grimdark type vibe where it's dark, it's gritty, there's lots of backstabbing and betrayal, but Narnia is so wholesome, and yes, there's difficulties and challenges they face, but there's something about the world of Narnia that felt very beautiful and wondrous to me. So I guess in terms of story or writing, what I do see spilling over is a little bit of that innate sense of wonder in the world, and that like the fantasy world you want to go escape to. That's just very beautiful and very hopeful, I guess is a good word for it. Probably one of the biggest influences in my actual writing style and storytelling is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. So dude, if you haven't read this book, you just need to go drop everything and read it now, because this is like a perfect book. It's got a touch of dark, but it's witty and funny too, and it's cozy. Even as it's kind of bleak, it's also it's rich with ambience. I don't know if any of that made sense, but I have studied this book in great detail to see how she handles pacing, dialogue, tension, scene structure. So yeah, if you haven't read this book yet, go read it immediately. It's incredible. It's not what you think it's gonna be. Can't recommend it enough. Okay, so one more story that I just thought of that isn't a book, but that did really shape the way I imagine the world of my story is the BBC show Merlin. There's something about the flavor, the tone of Camelot as depicted in the Merlin TV show is really similar. See, I don't even know how to put this in words, but it's something about the color scheme in the Merlin TV show that really fits the way I imagine my books. And now that I say it, I'm struggling to figure out exactly what it was about that show that influenced me, but I think it was the kind of mythic flavor of it, the camaraderie of friendship. Friendship is a huge theme in the story that I'm writing, so the character arcs that you see grow over a long period of time, the magic system, the very elemental magic system. So those are all some of the influences from the Merlin TV show that I can kind of see feeding into my book as well. So the last 3 books I have here are all influences on the way I wrote the book, the style that it is. So I already mentioned the Scorpio races. That was definitely a huge influence for my writing style and shaping my own voice. But here were a few others. The first one is Beowulf, translated by Seamus Heaney. The language that Seamus Heaney uses in this translation reminded me how beautiful writing can be. There's sort of this feeling that's evoked from the words he uses where you're in the world with him and you see. So my writing, I promise my writing is not this epic in scale, but there are parts of this that I took into the writing so that it felt more authentic, so that you could, through the language, put yourself into the other world. So, he uses words like hoarfrost, war sword, bequeathed, bestowed. Beowulf bore himself with valor. He was formidable in battle. I wanted that kind of language so that even the language would lend itself to your imagining. Over the waves, with the wind behind her and foam at her neck, she flew like a bird until her curved prow had covered the distance, and on the following day, at the due hour, those seafarers sighted land, sunlit cliffs, sheer crags, and looming headlands, the landfall they sought. Beowulf is one of the original hero myths, so it's very grand. It's got a very mythic atmosphere. One thing that I remember reading in this that's really interesting, that Seamus Heaney, when he was translating it, he would use alliteration at the beginning and the end of the line, in every single line. So those seafarers sighted land, so the double S, those sunlit crags, sheer cliffs, the sharp C sound in those, it just kind of propels you forward through the narrative. There's just sort of a rhythm and a cadence to the language that I really loved. And Beowulf was originally a story that was passed down by oral tradition, so it was told and retold around campfires, and so having that rhythmic cadence kind of helped people remember it and pass it on. So anyway, Beowulf, very cool. So the next influence was The Secret History by Donna Tartt, one of my favorite books of all time. This book is about a group of classics students at a private university who decide to kill one of their friends. So from the first page that they kill him, so the entire book, instead of being like a whodunit, it's a whydunit, like why did they kill their friend? So obviously it's a very different genre, very different vibe altogether, but what I really took away from this was the writing style. Donna Tartt is an incredible writer, and she is said to have taken a lot of inspiration from Charles Dickens, who I also really love as a writer. So the writing style in The Secret History was a huge influence for me. The way she does descriptions, the slapdash dialogue between characters, just the way she paces sentences and phrases dialogue, that kind of thing. So the last book that has really influenced my writing is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This book is a World War II novel. Beautiful, beautiful story if you haven't read it. Anthony Doerr might be one of the best writers I've ever read. Just the way he would paint descriptions. One thing I do remember noticing is the verbs are always so intriguing and they just click the scene into place for you. There's just so many. You know what? I'm gonna do a breakdown of this book, how he accomplishes the beautiful writing that he puts into this book. So anyway, I'm not gonna say much else about this book because I feel like I've been rambling for far too long at this point, but these are the books that have influenced me the most in the writing of Project Amaranth. One of the things they tell you to think about as you're preparing for publication is finding comp titles, books that you could kind of compare your story to. And it's always been a little hard. I honest to goodness feel like I've never found a book that's like Project Amaranth before. So it's a little hard to compare to anything else, but I guess if I had to find influences, these are them, So that's a very indirect way of me telling you that if you like any of these books, you'll probably like mine too. So I would be curious if you've read any of these books. Drop a comment down below and tell me what you thought of them. Alright you guys, that is all for today. So if you're excited to hear more about Project Amaranth, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and stick around. There are a lot more updates coming very soon. With all that said, cheers, have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.